in Jakarta, based out of Plug and Play, and having a few conversations with some of the startups that we've got in this space here. So thanks for joining us. I'm here with Adi from Trukita.com. How are you, Adi?
Hey, how are you? I'm doing fine.
That's great. So can you tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do with Trukita.com?
Oh, I know it's a little bit hard to spell the name, but it's actually Trukita. Well, basically, in Trukita, we are trying to address one of the most pressing problem here in Indonesia, namely logistic and goods distribution. Just to give you some number here, the cost of logistic in Indonesia is actually 26% of GDP. In layman terms, basically, for every good you purchase, basically a quarter of the price is actually toward shipment cost.
Right.
So we do realize that's a problem. Even the Indonesian government realize that's the problem. The question is now what we are going to do about it. So
Yeah, just on that, you did say beforehand that you weren't so good with numbers, but I think you did a good job there.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what would sort of be a bit of a target? What sort of percentage cost price do you think we should try and aim for?
Yeah, well, in for the Southeast Asia regions, you couldn't really compare with Singapore, right? Because
Yeah.
Singapore have really efficient transport system. The more comparable country will be Thailand, for example, that they reach around 10 to 15%. So that's how much difference is the price.
So there's quite a bit of saving
Yes,
there,
that's
a lot
true.
of potential still.
There's a lot of potential, and if you go look at more developed economy, for example, U.S. or Europe, and it's actually less than 2.5%. So it's almost 10 times
Yeah.
the cost of logistics here in Indonesia. So this is a pressing issue, and I think this is also the best time for us, for a technology company here in Indonesia, to address such problem.
So a great lead into that, Adi, is what is it that you guys are doing to address that problem?
Yes, well, basically, if you trace back, if you peel the layer, for example, the problem is actually can be traced back to information asymmetry, meaning that there's information gap between service provider and service user. Service provider here usually small or medium-sized trucking companies, and on the other hand, you have service users, which is basically businesses. Businesses also, you can also divide it into two small part. One small part is usually small medium enterprises, which basically accounted for 80% of employment here, and the rest is basically large enterprise. So that's why at the moment we are trying to bring them together into one single platform.
Yep.
So the challenge will be actually trying to convince them to join the platform at the moment. So.
Right, so tell us a little bit more how your platform actually operates. So who have you got listing on either side, and how do you guys act in the middle of those?
Yeah, that's true. Actually, at the moment, in the beginning, because the goal is actually trying to educate the market, educate the users. What we are trying to do is for the transporter, which is actually service provider, we are trying to ask them to join us, and then they will post their the service that they provide, the price list, and the area coverage. And on the other hand, we are trying to ask the businesses to post their logistic needs. For example, where they want to send their goods, and what range of price they are looking for. And at the end, as a platform, we're trying to match them so that the transporter will also have more customer in that sense, and then the user, which is the businesses, will also find the best price that they can get, which is hopefully way cheaper than they currently have in the market.
Fantastic. And so as you guys are starting out, are you focusing on any particular sectors or industries or any sort of scale and size of transport companies, or are you?
Yes, at the beginning here at the moment, because we are a startup, then so we really need to pick our battlefield,
Yeah.
so to speak. So we are focusing on the small, medium-sized enterprise, which apply for both sides. So we are working together with small, medium-sized trucking companies, which is actually usually run by small management team or usually family run. And at the same time, for the users, we also working for SME here, which is actually spread across the country here. So, for example, we can say if you go to Pekalongan in Central Java, usually it will be SMEs who are working in producing batik textile, and that's where we are focusing at the moment. But we also focus on in Bandung, for example. Usually, our customer is small, medium-sized textile company.
Yep.
So we pick our battle, but still quite large.
Yep.
But it will be around. It will be still focused on small, medium-sized enterprise at the moment.
Sure. So we are sitting in Jakarta now, and you
Sure.
did mention a few other locations. Whereabouts is Trukita.com operating?
We are operating from Jakarta at the moment.
Yep.
We are really young with our current teams, so we have around 10 people working.
Sure.
And so all the operation run here from Jakarta, but we do have people in Medan, for example. We have people in Bandung, and we have people in Jogja. So hopefully within the next 1 or 2 years, we will cover entire Sumatra, Java, and Bali. But the goal is actually trying to connect Indonesia all.
Yeah. Absolutely. And as you shared with us at the start, it's a big challenge that's currently being faced by different companies in Indonesia. So providing that solution is the right way to go about it.
Yeah.
So before we went live, Adi and I were having a bit of a chat about being part of this present plug and play cohort. Did you want to share a little bit more with us on camera about that?
Yes. For us, I mean, well, to tell you a little bit about the background of in Trukita, for example, we were a little bit too arrogant, I guess. This is what happened with young founders, I guess. So we thought
that's great that you admit that.
yeah. I mean, we thought that we are quite smart. We could actually handle everything, but that's not necessarily true. But even if it's true, it's actually cost you so much time and energy. So over time, we realized that we need a partner. Especially that's why when there was this opportunity to join PNP Accelerator program, we were really excited, and then we apply, and luckily we are accepted. And why PNP itself is actually because we see that PNP is actually focusing on bringing startup world together with corporate world, and I think that's actually opening so many doors for us later on. Even now, we have learned and we have received so many knowledge that we wouldn't have been possible to get any other way. So, for example, a few weeks back, we sit together with a corporate partner that also part of partner of PNP. For example, we had a networking event here with Astra Group, one of the largest conglomerate in automotive industry. Apparently, they actually diversify their industry, something that you actually know after talking to them. And then after that, we also talk with people from BNY, one of the largest and oldest state bank here in Indonesia, and also Synergies Group, one of the largest conglomerate here too. I mean, that wouldn't be possible without the help from PNP. I mean, PNP opened the door for us. I think they actually facilitate some meeting with these conglomerates and these corporates. So I think that's something that you wouldn't get otherwise if you don't join the program.
Absolutely. It sounds like it's a really rewarding experience to be a part of that. Yes. And you've also been fortunate enough to have another experience over in Australia, which I'd love to hear more about, being Australian myself.
Well, that's actually an interesting story because I think it was in 2016, Trukita, before its current management team, actually applied as to Australia Award for short-term course. And during where I was lucky enough to visit Australia for 2 weeks, where I visited, let me just say Brisbane, and then we flew to Sydney, and then to Canberra, and to Adelaide. So we visited so many cities within that 2 weeks. It was quite tiring experience, but fulfilling, really fulfilling. We were exposed into a different startup landscape there in Australia. Something that, what's surprising is, even though if you look at the map, we are really close,
Yeah.
but apparently we people don't really know each other
Yeah.
much, let alone in the startup community.
Yeah.
But that's actually opened the door. Some of startup that I went with actually collaborated further up until now between Indonesian startup and Australian startup. So I think
That's
that's really opening.
yeah, that's really positive to hear.
Yeah,
And
yes.
it was going to be my follow-on question is, having had exposure to the Australian ecosystem and being a player here in Indonesia, what sort of synergies or sharings do you see the potential for between the two?
I think there's so much potential to work together, but at the beginning, I think if you notice that the startup community here is quite new, still in its nascent. So we learn so much from what we have been, what he has been doing, what has been done in Australia, for example. But one thing that we notice is actually Australian startups tend to go global quickly.
Yeah.
And that's something that really out of our thinking at the time. But I think that's something that we can learn how to really scale fast and scale globally.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier in our talk, there was this small company in Adelaide,
Yeah.
sort of out of nowhere, but actually have a global reach. So I think
Yeah.
that's something that we can
Yeah.
really learn from startup community in Australia.
Yeah, definitely something to take away
Yes.
and keep in mind for the future with Trukita.com.
Thank you.
So if anyone wants to get in touch with you guys, how can they go about it?
Well, you can easily find us through Trukita.com. Just type Trukita.com, and you can also reach me at adi@trukita.com, ady@trukita.com. Otherwise, you can also find all our social media channels in our website. So feel free to connect with us.
Great, and we'll share those details in the comments to this video as well, so you can connect from there. Keep watching the videos for the rest of today, and following at Beach City Life to hear more of some of the great conversations that we're having.